I didn't notice it the first time. That was just part of the forest. Something in the distance. A shape between the trees. Easy to ignore. The trail I was walking wasn't unusual. It was one I had taken before. Not often, but enough to remember it. There's a point where the path opened slightly. A small clearing. Nothing special. Just space between the trees. That's where I saw it. House. Far away. Barely visible. I slowed down, looked at it. Then looked away, because it didn't seem important. Just something in the background. When I looked back, it was gone. I stopped, focused on the same spot. Nothing. Just trees. I stood there for a moment, then continued walking. It didn't feel strange. Not yet. Just something I didn't think about. The next day, I came back. Same path. Same time. The clearing appeared again. And this time, I noticed it immediately. The house. In the same place. Same distance. I stopped. Didn't look away. This time. Just watched. The house stayed unmoving. Silent. Part of the space. I took a step forward. It didn't get closer. That was the first thing I noticed. Distance didn't change. No matter how I moved. I walked a little further. Still the same, like it wasn't connected to where I stood. I turned my head slightly, not fully away, just enough to break focus. Then looked back. It was still there, but not fully. Something was different. The edges, less defined, like part of it had faded. I stepped closer. Slowly. Carefully. And then it became clearer again. Not suddenly. Gradually. As if it was returning. I stopped, then took a step back. The house faded slightly. Not gone. Just less. I exhaled slowly. So that was something. It didn't disappear completely. It changed, depending on how I looked at it. How I stood. How I moved. I stood there for a while, testing it. Looking directly clear. Looking slightly away. Faded. Looking down. Almost gone. But never fully. There was always something left. A line. A corner. A shadow. Enough to know it was still there. I stepped forward again. The house returned. More complete. More present. I watched it carefully, trying to understand something simple. Was it moving? Or was I? I walked slowly toward the clearing. Step by step. The distance didn't change. The house didn't get closer, but it felt stronger, more real. I stopped at the edge of the clearing, looked directly at it. This time, it was clear, fully visible. A small house. Wooden. Still. No lights. No movement, but not abandoned, just present, like it existed without needing anything. I stood there, then quietly said, "Are you always here?" The forest didn't respond, but something shifted. Very slightly. Not in the house. In the feeling, like the question mattered. I stayed for a few more minutes. Then slowly, I stepped back. The house faded again. Not gone. Just less. I turned around, started walking away, and after a few steps I stopped, because I could still see it. Not clearly, but enough. A fragment, a shape, still there, even from a different angle. I turned fully, looked again. It remained. Faint. Incomplete. But present. I nodded slowly. Because now I understood something important. The house didn't disappear. Not completely. It always left something behind. Something just enough to be noticed. If you were paying attention. I walked out of the forest. The light changed. The sounds returned. Everything normal again. But even then, I had a strange feeling. Like if I looked in the right direction, just for a second, I would still see it. Not fully. Just enough. And that night, when I closed my eyes, I could still picture it. Not clearly. Not completely. Just fragments. Edges. Shadows. Like something that hadn't fully left, because it hadn't. Not really. And I knew the next time I returned, it wouldn't just be there again. It would be more. I didn't plan to go back the next day, but I kept thinking about it. Not clearly, not like a memory, more like a leftover, a shape that didn't fully leave. I tried to ignore it, went through the day normally, work, noise, movement. Everything as usual. And yet, every now and then I noticed it. Not in front of me. Not directly, just at the edge of things. A line, a corner, something that didn't belong. I would turn, and it would be gone. Or almost gone, just enough to question it. That evening, I didn't decide to return. I just walked, without thinking about direction. And somehow, I ended up near the forest again. The entrance looked the same. Nothing unusual. I stood there for a moment, then stepped inside. The path was quiet. Calm. Normal. But now I was paying attention. To everything. The trees. The space. The distance. And then before I reached the clearing, I saw it. Not fully, just a fragment. Between the trees, closer than before. I stopped, looked carefully. It wasn't supposed to be visible yet. The clearing was further ahead. And yet, there it was, a part of it. A wall. Faint. Incomplete. I stepped forward slowly. The fragment became clearer. Then, more appeared. The roof, a corner, the outline of a window. I exhaled slowly. It wasn't waiting for me to reach it anymore. It was appearing earlier. I kept walking, step by step. And with each step, the house became more complete. Not suddenly. Gradually. As if it was building itself or revealing itself. Before I even reached the clearing, it was already there, fully visible, stronger than before. I stopped, looked at it. It felt closer. Not in distance. In presence, like it occupied more of the space. I stepped into the clearing. The house didn't change, didn't fade, didn't shift. It stayed. Clear. Stable. Stood there. Then slowly looked away. Just for a second, and looked back. This time, it didn't fade as much, only slightly. Barely. Nodded. So that was changing too. It wasn't losing itself as easily. I stepped back. The house remained visible, more than before. Even at a distance, I turned slightly. Not fully away. Still there. Faint. But stronger than it had ever been. I looked down, then up again. Still there. I stood still, and for the first time, I realized something. It wasn't just that the house stayed. It was that I was starting to see it even when I shouldn't. I turned around, walked away from the clearing. Slowly. Step by step. And after a few steps, I stopped, turned back. The house was still visible. Not fully, but clearly enough. Through the trees. From further away than before. I exhaled. Because now it was obvious. The distance didn't matter anymore. The house wasn't tied to a place. It was tied to awareness. I continued walking. Further from the clearing. Further down the path. Then stopped again. Turned back. Still there. Smaller. Fainter. But present. I nodded slowly. So it didn't disappear when I left. It just reduced. I walked out of the forest. Back to the street. The lights were on. Cars passing. People moving. Everything normal. And yet, I noticed it again. Not in the forest this time. Not directly, but reflected. In a window across the street. I stopped. Looked at the glass. At first, nothing. Then just for a second, a shape, a line, a corner. Gone again. I didn't move. Just stood there. Then quietly said, "You're still here." No answer, but the feeling remained. Not strong. Not overwhelming. Just enough. I walked home. Slowly. Not looking for it anymore. Because I knew. It wasn't something I needed to find. It was something that stayed. Partially. Always. And the next time, it wouldn't just appear earlier. It would appear closer. I didn't wait long this time. There was no reason to. It wasn't something I had to look for anymore. Dot it was already there. Dot not fully, but enough. Dot the next evening, I returned. Dot same path, same forest. Nothing had changed. At least not visibly. I walked slowly, more aware than before, watching everything. And before I reached the clearing, I saw it again. The house, not as a fragment, not as a shadow. Dot clear. Dot complete. Dot already there. I stopped. Dot because that was new. Before it appeared gradually. Now it didn't wait. Dot it was present from the start. Stepped forward. Dot the house didn't change, didn't grow, didn't fade. Dot it just remained. Dot steady. Dot I walked into the clearing. Dot everything felt stable. Dot the house stood in front of me. Dot same shape, same structure, but something was different. Dot not in how it looked. Dot in how it felt. Dot it was closer. Dot not in distance. Dot in connection, like it wasn't separate anymore. I stood there for a moment. Dot then slowly I took a step to the side. Dot the house stayed, didn't fade, didn't weaken. I looked away, fully this time. Dot at the trees. Dot at the ground. Dot then back again. Still there. Dot no loss. Dot no change. I exhaled slowly. Dot so that rule was gone. That no longer depended on where I looked or how I moved. Dot it had become stable. I stepped closer. For the first time, the distance changed. Dot slightly. Dot barely noticeable, but real. I stopped, looked carefully. The house was closer, not by much, but enough. I stepped back. Dot it stayed where it was, didn't move away, didn't return. I nodded. So now movement mattered, but differently. I walked forward. Again. Dot slowly. Dot and the house became closer. Not instantly. Dot gradually. Dot as if it allowed it. I stopped just before the porch. Dot closer than I had ever been. The details were clear now. Dot wood. Dot texture, edges. Dot everything real. I stood there. Dot looking at it. Dot and then I noticed something new. Dot the door. Dot it wasn't fully visible, not because of distance, because part of it was missing. Dot not gone. Dot just incomplete. Dot like it hadn't fully formed. I stepped closer. The missing part filled in. Dot slowly. Dot quietly. Dot until the door was whole. I stopped, looked at it. Dot then stepped back. Dot the door lost a small part again, not fully disappearing. Dot just slightly less. I exhaled. Dot because now it was clear. Dot the house didn't just stay, it adjusted. Dot to me. Dot to my position. Dot to my presence. I stood still. Dot watching. Dot and after a few seconds, I noticed something else. Dot the house wasn't the only thing changing. The clearing felt smaller, not visibly. Dot but in distance, like everything was closing in slightly. I stepped back. The space opened again. I nodded slowly. Dot so it wasn't just the house. Dot it was everything around it. I turned slightly, looked at the trees, then back at the house. Still there. Dot stable. Dot waiting. Dot I stepped forward again, onto the first step of the porch. The wood felt solid. Dot real. Dot I paused, not out of hesitation, but because now I understood something important. Before, I was observing it. Now I was part of it. I stood there, then quietly said, "You don't go away anymore." The forest remained silent, but the house felt present in a different way. Not just existing, responding. Reached out, placed my hand near the door, not touching it yet. Dot and for a moment, everything felt aligned. Dot complete. Dot then dash very slightly. I noticed something behind me. I turned. The forest looked normal, but now just for a second I saw it, a fragment of the house, between the trees. Dot behind me. I froze, because now it wasn't just in front of me. Dot it was everywhere. Dot not fully. Dot just partially. Dot enough to be seen. Dot if I looked. Turned back slowly. The house in front still there. Dot unchanged. Dot but now I understood something new. Dot it wasn't staying in one place. Dot it was spreading, and the more I noticed it, the more of it existed. I lowered my hand slightly, then said quietly, You're not just here. The silence remained, but the meaning was already clear. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I had come to the house. Or if the house was coming to me. I didn't move right away. Not after that. Because now everything felt connected. The house in front of me, the fragments behind me. The space around me. All part of the same thing. I stood on the porch. Not stepping forward, not stepping back. Just between. And slowly, I began to notice it more clearly. The fragments, they weren't random. They followed structure, a corner between two trees, a faint outline, beside a shadow, a piece of a wall, where there should be none. I turned slightly, and each time I shifted my perspective, the house adjusted. Not moving. Expanding. Filling in. I looked forward again. The full house remained. Complete. Stable. But now it didn't feel like the main version anymore. It felt like just one of many. I stepped off the porch. Slowly. The house in front of me didn't disappear, but it felt less central. I turned, and there between the trees, another part of it. A window. Faint. Incomplete. I walked toward it. And as I moved, it became clearer. More defined, more real. I stopped, turned back. The original house still there, but now slightly less complete. I exhaled slowly. So it wasn't one place anymore. It was distributed. I took a step back. The fragment faded slightly. The house in front became stronger again. I nodded. So attention mattered. Position mattered. Awareness mattered. I stood still, and after a few seconds, everything began to shift again. Not suddenly. Gradually. The fragments started to connect. Not physically, but in perception. Space between them felt shorter. Closer. Like they belonged together. I walked slowly across the clearing. From one fragment to another. And each time, structure became clearer. A wall here, a corner there, a roof line above where nothing had been before. I stopped, looked up. For a moment, I could see it. Not fully, but enough. Shape of the house overlapping the forest, not replacing it, existing with it. I lowered my gaze. Everything returned. Trees. Ground. Space. But now I knew it was still there. Just not fully visible. I walked back toward the porch. The main house became complete again. Stable. Clear. As if nothing had changed, but everything had. I stepped onto the porch once more. Looked at the door. This time, it was fully formed. No missing pieces. No fading. I reached out, placed my hand on it, and the moment I did, everything aligned. The fragments disappeared. The forest felt distant. The house became the only structure. I stood there. Hand on the door. Not moving. And for the first time, there was no uncertainty. No shifting. No partial presence. Just complete stillness. I exhaled slowly, then quietly said, "This is where it stays." The silence didn't respond, but it didn't need to, because now I understood something clearly. The house didn't fully disappear because it wasn't meant to. Was always partially present, until the moment it became fully real. And that moment depended on me. I stood there for a long time, not opening the door. Not stepping away. Just present. And slowly I realized something else. The forest behind me was starting to feel less real. Not gone. Just less defined, like it was fading the same way this house used to. I turned slightly. The trees were still there. But softer. Less detailed. Less important. Turned back to the door. It remained. Sharp. Clear. complete. I nodded slowly, because now the roles had reversed. The house wasn't the thing fading anymore. Everything else was. I rested my hand more firmly on the door and said quietly, "Next time, I won't stop here." The house remained silent, but something about it felt like it was waiting. Not for me to leave, for me to continue. Didn't wait long. Not this time. My hand was already on the door. And for the first time, nothing felt uncertain. No shifting. No fading. Just clarity. I opened it. Slowly. Without hesitation. The door moved easily. No resistance. No sound. And beyond it, there was no sudden change. No darkness. No different space. Just another room. Simple. Quiet. A table. A chair. Nothing unusual. I stepped inside. The moment I crossed the threshold, the outside didn't disappear, but it felt distant. Less important. I turned slightly. The doorway behind me was still open. The forest visible, but faint. Not fading, just secondary. I looked forward. Again. The room remained still. Unchanged. But something about it felt complete. Not empty. Finished. I walked slowly across the floor. Each step felt stable. No delay. No shift. Just solid. I stopped near the table. Looked at it. Then at the chair. Everything was simple, but precise. Like nothing extra was needed. I sat down, and the moment I did, everything aligned. Not visually. In feeling. Like the space had reached its final state. I rested my hands on the table, looked around. And for the first time, there were no fragments. No partial shapes. No fading edges. Everything was whole. I exhaled slowly, then said quietly, "You're complete." The room didn't respond, but the silence felt finished. Not waiting. Not changing. Just present. I stood up again, walked toward the doorway, looked outside. The forest was still there, but now it looked like something I had already left. Not physically, but in understanding. I stepped back from the doorway, and slowly the forest faded. Not disappearing. Just becoming less defined. Less relevant. Until it was no longer the focus. I turned back to the room. Everything remained clear. Stable. Complete. I walked to the center. Stopped. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was visiting. I wasn't observing. I wasn't following. I was inside. Fully. I took a slow breath, then sat down. Again, not out of habit. Out of understanding. Because now I knew what the house was. It never fully disappeared, because it was never fully separate. It was always there, partially. Waiting to be seen. To be understood. To be completed. And once it was, it didn't need to appear anymore, because it didn't leave. I looked at the table. At the chair. At the space around me. Everything felt right. Not perfect. Not ideal. Just correct. I closed my eyes for a moment, then opened them again. Nothing changed. No shift. No fading. Just stillness. I nodded slightly, because now I understood the final part. The house didn't come to me. I didn't go to it. We met at the point where nothing needed to disappear anymore. I stood up one last time, walked slowly through the room, each step steady, each movement complete. Then stopped and quietly said, "I'm here." The silence remained, but this time it felt like an answer, not spoken, but understood. And from that moment, there was nothing left to appear, nothing left to fade, nothing left to question, because everything was already there.